Good morning, students. Let us welcome to our bio class and we'll continue with the rest of the portions on circulatory system. So here we are about to start a very important topic, that is blood circulatory system. In this system, what are the organs and how do they function? So the circulatory system consists of heart, arteries, veins and capillaries. And the first and foremost thing in this circulatory system is all about our heart, which is located right at the center between the two lungs and above the diaphragm. And the narrow end of the roughly triangular heart is pointed towards the left side during the working. And the contraction of heart is most powerful at this end, giving a feeling that the heart is on the left side. If anyone asks you which side is your heart, then most often I have seen they say that my heart is on the left side or towards the left side. In fact, that is not on the left side, rather it is pointed towards the left. So we feel as if our heart is on the left side. In fact, we have the heart at the right at the center between the two lungs and above the diaphragm. Now when we come to the covering of heart, the heart in human or an adult human being is about the size of our closed fist, which is about 12 cm in length and 9 cm in width. It's protected by a double-walled membranous covering called pericardium. It contains lubricating pericardial fluid which reduces friction during the heartbeat and protects it from the mechanical injuries. Heart consists of 4 chambers, 2 upper auricles and 2 lower ventricles. The auricle is also called as the upper atria and they have thinner walls because the major function is to receive the blood from the body and pump it to the very next ventricle. I think all these things you do remember because I have already taught you in the junior classes. Now when we come to the ventricles, ventricles have thick muscular walls because they have to pump the blood to long distances. The right ventricle pumps blood only up to the lungs for oxygenation, but the left ventricle pumps it up to the farthest point in your body, so such as up to the toes in the feet or up to the brain against the gravity. So its walls are thicker. Most often a question comes in your exam, why the ventricles have thick muscular walls whereas auricles have thin muscular walls. So the answer you have to write here is that auricles has to pump the blood to the very next ventricle, whereas ventricle has to pump the blood to the farthest point in our body. So this is the answer for this question. This was about the chambers of heart. Our next topic is blood vessels entering and leaving the heart. So what are the blood vessels that enter the heart and which are the blood vessels that are leaving the heart? So let us see the blood vessels entering the heart. Vessels entering the heart are the right auricle receives 2 large blood vessels called anterior vena cava and posterior vena cava. Anterior vena cava is also called as the superior vena cava or the precaval, and this brings deoxygenated blood from the anterior or the upper part of the body or upper regions of the body, including our head, our chest and arms. Whereas the posterior vena cava, which is also called as the inferior vena cava, brings blood from the posterior or the lower region of the body, including the abdomen and legs. The left auricle receives 4 pulmonary veins, each from 2 lungs, and the pulmonary veins always brings oxygenated blood. Let us see the blood vessels leaving the heart. Arising from the ventricles, there are 2 large blood vessels, such as the pulmonary artery and the aorta. The pulmonary artery arises from the right ventricle and carries deoxygenated blood to the lungs for oxygenation, whereas the aorta rises from the left ventricle and carries oxygenated blood to supply it to all parts of the body. There are also 2 coronary arteries called as on the right and left side, which arises from the base of the aorta. So these coronary arteries supply blood to the heart muscles, and when there is a blockage in any coronary artery or in any one or more of their branches, that is a deadening of the corresponding area of the heart, and this leads to myocardial infarction, which also we call it as heart attack. So heart attack in biological language, we call it as myocardial infarction. That means there is a blockage in the vessels, blood vessels. So the coronary veins collect the blood from heart valves and pour it into the right auricle. Angina pectoris, this is called chest pain, which we most often listen when we have the myocardial infarction. So this angina pectoris or the chest pain is due to the insufficient supply of blood to the heart muscles. Now valves regulate the flow of blood in single direction. So there are 4 valves in the heart. First is our right auriculo-ventricular valve or right atrioventricular valve. This is located at the aperture between the right auricle and the right ventricle. You can see the figure in the internal structure of human heart and you can verify where this is or where it is located. It has 3 thin triangular leaf-like flaps or cusps, and therefore it is called as tricuspid valve. Because it has 3 cusps, it is called tricuspid valve. Now the apices or the apex of the flaps are held in position by tendinous chordae or chordae tendineae, which arises from the muscular projections of the ventricle and valve and known as the papillary muscles. These are holding the chordae tendineae in the particular position. Now when we come to left auriculo-ventricular valve, it is located in the similar way but on the left side of the heart, and it has only 2 cusps. That means it has 2 flaps, and so it is called as bicuspid valve. It is also called as mitral valve. Now when we come to pulmonary semilunar valve, these are located at the opening of the right ventricle into the pulmonary artery, and these are pocket shaped and 3 in numbers. After that, when we come to aortic semilunar valves, they are located at the point of origin of aorta from the left ventricle, and these are also 3 in numbers and pocket shaped. So right now we have the circulation of blood in the heart. So how this blood circulates in our heart, which is the beginning where the blood starts its movement. So see, it starts with the contraction of the 2 auricles. The ventricles at the same time are relaxing. Here contraction of auricles, relaxation of ventricles, or this is also called as dilating of ventricles, and these are empty. These are empty. Therefore the blood from the auricle very easily passes to the ventricle. Can you imagine? When the auricle is contracting, ventricles are empty, so they are dilating and they are pushing the blood from ventricle to from auricle to ventricle. That's how the blood passes from auricle to ventricle easily. Next, what happens? The ventricles contract. First the auricles contract, next step ventricles contract, and the auricles are relaxed. Now the blood vessels from the ventricles, due to pressure, tends to return to the auricle. It will try to move the blood again to the auricle, but there is a cuspid valve or the flaps of the valves, and they tighten and puff it up. That means they will not tend the blood to return back from ventricle to auricle again. So they closes the passage and prevent the returning of blood, and the chordae tendineae holds the flaps of the valves in such a position that it prevents the overturning of the blood into the auricle. Now the only way or the only course left for the ventricular blood is to enter the pulmonary artery. From pulmonary, they enter the pulmonary artery from the right ventricle and the aorta from the left ventricle. So the mouth of the pocket-like valves at the bases of these 2 blood vessels face away from the ventricle. Therefore, the blood leaving the ventricle presses the valves flat and gets a clear passage in between. This is how it passes. Now, when the ventricles dilate, the blood from the pulmonary artery and the aorta tends to return back again, because the blood fills the pocket of the valves and thus the closes the passage. This is how the blood circulates from auricle to ventricle, from ventricle to pulmonary artery and aorta. Now what is this heartbeat and how does it take place, and which phase of the heart we call it as a heart has started its beating? steps of a heartbeat are called as cardiac cycle, and each heartbeat consists of two main steps. The auricle contract first, followed by the contraction of the ventricle, and the contraction phase is also called as systole, which is followed by a relaxation phase or expansion phase called as the diastole. So in a heartbeat there are two phases, contraction and expansion phase. Contraction phase is called as systole, expansion phase is called as diastole. Each full beat of the human heart lasts for about 0.85 seconds only. So in this 0.85 seconds, what happens? 0.15 second itself it takes place in the systole of auricle, 0.30 seconds in the systole of ventricle, and when all the chambers are in a relaxed state, it takes 40 seconds. So all total it comes 0.85 seconds. So these three circulations makes each single heartbeat, and it comes around 0.85 seconds. At the end of ventricular systole, the ventricle starts relaxing, and that is called as ventricular diastole. So meanwhile, the auricles also have been relaxing, that is called as auricle diastole, and that's for a short period of time. Here both the auricle and the ventricles are in a relaxed state, that is called as joint diastole. So the whole sequence of events in the heartbeat is called as a cardiac cycle. The heart sounds lub and dub. What does that mean? Now if you hear your heart sound by placing a stethoscope on your chest, you'll hear two sounds, that is lub and dub. That is within a short succession followed by a gap. Now the first sound, that is lub, is produced when the ventricular or tricuspid and bicuspid valves get closed sharply at the start of ventricular systole. And the sound dub is produced when the beginning of ventricular diastole or the semilunar valves at the root of aorta and pulmonary artery get closed. So these are the sound called lub and dub, which we can hear if we place the stethoscope on somebody's heart. Now, rate of heartbeat. This varies among different species and even in individuals. Being a human being, it varies from individual to individual. Now some of these variations in beats per minute in different species are as follows, such as whale beats 15 times, elephant is 25 times, you see horse 40 times, adult human being 64 to 72 times, and at last you see sparrow, it is around 800 to 900 times. You see, when you see huge animals, the heartbeat is very less. When you see smaller animals, the heartbeat is more. Did you see? That means it depends upon the circulation of heart. Because elephant and whales are big, huge animals, once to circulate, it will take little more time. So within a minute, only 15 times it can be circulate, or the heartbeat will be lessened. But in rat and sparrow, they are very small animals, so they will be completing their circulation very fast. So it is more in them within 1 minute. So we find any relationship between the size of the body and the rate of the heartbeats. Smaller the size, faster is the heart rate. This is because smaller the animal, the more it loses its body heat due to higher surface volume ratio, and therefore the increased heart rate distributes the body heat faster. Secondly, the young growing stages such as the human baby have higher metabolism for body growth, and therefore the faster heart rate keeps the supply and takeoff of the metabolic substances in right quantities. That's why it beats more faster. It's a pacemaker. Pacemaker is the impulse or a command which starts the heart beating. Which starts when the heart beating arises. And this is also called as sinoatrial node or SAN, and it's located in the walls of the right auricle. The impulse is delayed to the ventricle with the help of special conducting fibers. The pacemaker, which is also called as SAN node, is present near the opening of the superior vena cava, while the AVN, that is atrioventricular node, is found near the intra-auricular septum near the tricuspid valve. A bundle of muscle fibers called the bundle of His begins from AVN and extends to the interventricular septum. Bundle of His consists of branches of fibers running along the wall of the ventricle called as the Purkinje fibers. All these together form a system which creates an impulse and conducts it to every part of the heart. So sometimes the pacemaker becomes faulty, causing heart trouble, and in this case an artificial pacemaker can be fixed in the heart of such a person by surgery. Now, which are the blood vessels present in the heart? You see, the blood vessels are branched tube extending from the heart to all parts of the body. They are of three kinds such as arteries, capillaries and veins. An artery is a vessel which carries blood away from the heart towards any other organ, and its characteristics are its thick muscular wall, it has a narrow lumen, and the blood in it flows in spurts, that means in not continuous, and this which corresponds to the ventricular contraction of the heart. And a vein is a vessel which carries the blood away from an organ towards the heart, which is quite opposite from the artery, and its characteristics are it has a thin muscular wall with a wider lumen and the blood in it flows uniformly, and it contains a thin pocket shaped valves whose opening faces in the direction of the heart. These valves prevent the backflow of the blood. The smallest or the final branches of an artery is called as an arteriole, and arterioles are highly muscular and can change the diameter manifold. The arteriole breaks up into capillaries. Now, a capillary is a very narrow, about 8 micrometers in diameter, and its characteristics are its wall consists of a single layer of squamous epithelial cells called endothelium and has no muscles. The total number of blood capillaries present in the whole body is almost inconceivable. That means you cannot know around how many capillaries are present in the body. What are the functions of capillaries? You see, it allows outward diffusion of oxygen into the intercellular fluid and from there into the tissue cells. It allows inward diffusion of carbon dioxide from the intracellular fluid. It allows inward and outward diffusion of substances like glucose, amino acids and urea, hormones, etc. It allows leukocytes or WBC to squeeze out through the capillary walls by means of amoeboid movement, and this was called as diapedesis. Do you remember when we have begun this lesson, we have discussed about diapedesis and phagocytosis? This is what we call it as diapedesis. Now, the capillaries have the power of dilating and contracting. When the capillaries dilate, they are called as vasodilation. When the capillaries contract, they are called as vasoconstriction. And these are respectively increasing and decreasing the blood supply to the body parts. Evidence of these changes in capillaries is seen in the color of the skin also. When you walk in the hot sun, your face turns pink. What does that imply? It means it has increased the flow of blood in your body. But when it is too cold, your face turns bluish. That means blood supply in the body is reduced. The capillaries gradually reunite and increase in the size, assuming the same three layers, that is connective tissue, muscular layer and endothelium, as in the arteries and veins. And the smallest united common branch is called as the venule. Venule joins to form larger veins compared with arterioles, and venules are larger with much weaker muscular coat. This is what about arteries, veins and capillaries, and the difference between the arteries and veins are very clearly given in your book of table 8.3, page number 104.